John, we're on.
Gary Hopper.
I'm Gary Hopper. How
Gary
you doing?
Hopper, nice to meet you, sir.
John Heichel, right?
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, tonight on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, we have Elizabeth Ropp, and that your name is, where is that, what nationality is it, R-O-P-P?
It could be German, it could be Dutch, something like that.
Something like that?
There might have been a Von in there at one point.
Von Ropp?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds, what's Von Ropp? Where did I hear that from? I've heard that before.
You're thinking about beach blanket bingo.
No, Von, Von Trapp.
Von Trapp?
Yeah.
The Sound of Music?
Sound of Music.
Yeah.
Von Zippel.
Von, yes.
Remember that?
The Von Trapp family farm isn't far from here. It's over in
It's
Vermont.
in Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big city. Up in the big city.
Hills are alive.
Huh?
The Hills are alive.
Hillsborough Live?
No, that's the wrong movie, right? That's not. Is that the sound?
That is the sound. That would be,
the
that
Hills
is.
are alive in
The Hills are
Vermont.
Yeah,
alive.
yeah.
Oh,
The Green
well,
Mountains are alive.
yes, but that's not what they were singing. They were singing about escaping.
Edelweiss.
Yeah.
Edelweiss, right?
They sang that too.
Yeah.
They sang.
One of my favorite movies.
Thank you for having me on your show. Oh, the clip is playing already. I guess we're gonna.
is?
I guess we're gonna do that
No,
now.
not
Yeah.
yet. We'll
Okay.
be able to see it.
It's right. Oh, it's right behind you. Yeah, we have a clip, and it relates to the bill that
You
I
want
am
to
here.
set this up before we go? So anyway, this young lady has been trying to get through a bill through the House, and so far her effort has been quite pleasant
Yeah.
up till now.
I mean, it's been hard work, but
Right.
yeah, it's been going pretty well.
Yeah, which is very unusual for a bill to get through the House on its first
Mm-hmm.
run through. And now it's a bill to,
It's a tool for recovery. It's so 24 states in the U.S. allow for people who are not acupuncturists to certify and train in a really specific ear acupuncture protocol that has been proven to help people withdraw from opioids, to reduce their cravings, and to deal with the underlying anxiety and trauma. So
Right.
people who go through this training aren't acupuncturists, they are acupuncture detoxification specialists. This started in the South Bronx.
They bring acupuncture, deal with acupuncture for recovery.
Yeah,
to
it's
bring
a
that
tool.
to a fine point.
So, right, of course. Haha. So,
Sorry.
right, so
It's going to get
I always
worse.
lose my train of thought around you, Gary.
I don't
What is
know.
up with that?
I don't know what happens.
Okay. So, again, the bill HB 575 relative to the certification of acupuncture detoxification specialists, we were on the consent calendar in the House. It passed the House unanimously. I prepared for months. People from the recovery community who had received acupuncture at Farnham and other programs testified
Yeah.
to how acupuncture helped them. Family members of people who are in recovery or lost someone to the opioid crisis came and testified. Medical professionals, doctors came and testified on the safety of acupuncture. And we had so much supporting documentation. I have the binder right here if you want to flip through it. And we have a specialist in the state of New Hampshire, and we'll be checking out her video clip on your show. The legislators on the House eDNA committee loved this bill. It was voted favorably after subcommittee 19-1. And then
Because it has an FN, but it really doesn't cost the state anything.
It
All
really
you're doing
doesn't.
is trying to get permission, which is kind of a ridiculous concept, from the state to use your talent to teach people how to specifically deal with recovery.
right. So
And
this
so it's not like costing the state of New Hampshire anything.
Through acupuncture? Am I?
Yeah.
it's a tool for recovery. It's an adjunct treatment that can be used within recovery programs, with mental health programs.
By an
It's
acupuncturist?
to allow for people who aren't acupuncturists to train and certify in this protocol.
Oh.
So actually, I'll tell you why I'm a licensed acupuncturist, and I can tell you why I'm not trying to get work for myself doing this. In the states of California and Oregon, where only licensed acupuncturists can practice acupuncture, there have been, in years past, successful drug treatment programs where acupuncture was used, however, to help people through the recovery process. However, due to funding cuts, it's financially unfeasible. It costs 16 times more to hire a licensed acupuncturist to provide this treatment than it is to train recovery workers who are already there to do the work. So, in California, after many acupuncture aspects of a program were shut down, It was the Alcohol and Drug Program Executive Association of the Alcohol and Drug Program Executives. People with California legislators and even acupuncturists who lost their jobs in these drug treatment programs worked together to try to open up a pathway to allow for training allied health professionals. And it was the Acupuncture Association of California that denied this possibility, even though there was still the potential aspects of creating jobs for acupuncturists in training the allied health professionals. The
Right.
Acupuncture Association of California was adamantly, no, only acupuncturists provide acupuncture. And the same
Job
thing,
security.
job security. But the problem is, it's not job security. I mean, that's really the whole thing. Acupuncturists think that if only they provide acupuncture, then they'll have better practices. But I know from being an acupuncturist for 10 years, that's not the case. It just means less people get acupuncture and benefit from it.
Yeah, actually, it's like
Most licensed professions feel the same way.
Yeah, I'm learning
Hairdressers,
that.
I mean, you know, you need to go to a salon rather than have somebody do it in their house.
Right.
There's a lot of professions that want to be protected
Right.
by that license.
But people are dying.
yeah, right.
Right, yeah, but follow the
we-
money. You've heard that once you
Yeah.
get up to Concord.
People are
unfortunately.
dying, and we even had a letter that gets printed out every year from the largest malpractice insurance company that covers acupuncturists that not a single malpractice insurance claim has ever been filed against an acupuncture detoxification specialist. And so I've never in my life tried to push legislation through a state house.
Yeah, this is our first time.
Success rate
Success rate for acupuncture?
for opioid addiction.
So I can tell you that the first acupuncture-based program in a drug court was in 1989. The Miami-Dade Drug Court used acupuncture, and they saw a reduction in arrests, cocaine-related arrests. And the third acupuncture-based program in a drug court was in Broward County, Florida. And 92% of the people who used acupuncture successfully made it through the drug court process, as opposed to 60% of the people who did not. And do you want me to?
No,
Do you want to take a look at all the supporting documentation?
No,
Yeah.
I could later. I mean,
Yeah.
this is important and this is good
Yeah.
news.
Right.
So, what was the state? I mean, what was the opposition now that's coming in?
The opposition, the only opposition
And
is
there's
from.
no state funding, right? There's there's
I'm not
nothing to do with
asking
the budget.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the budget. The bill was only to just allow this to happen. So at the very least, if a privately run recovery program wanted to do this, wanted to, get some of their employees trained to do this, they could do it. And then maybe we could see about funding for the respite care centers where so many people are waiting for beds in 28-day programs. And I know
Right.
because I've been there myself volunteering.
And New Hampshire licenses acupuncturists,
Yes, I'm a licensed acupuncturist
so
in
I
New
can't
Hampshire.
do that to anybody. I
No.
can't do it.
Yeah, what you do at your auto shop is
Can I do it to myself?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. I
Okay.
wouldn't have a problem with it personally, but yeah, it's the New Hampshire Board of Acupuncture Licensing, NHBAL, and the New Hampshire Acupuncture and Asian Medicine Association. They were our only opposition, and they had no real substantial arguments other than
Oh, they opposed you?
Yeah, they opposed it. Of
course they do.
Their only arguments are, we don't want this. Nobody asked us. There could be blood. Someone might faint. I've been practicing acupuncture for 10 years. Yeah, everyone has a fainting patient once every 10 years. It doesn't happen that often.
Right.
And it's very safe. We had all the documentation showing how safe this is.
How safe is it? Now you're dealing with people in recovery, and there's we just dealt with this on another bill in judiciary. The percentage of people who get hooked on heroin and fentanyl are at a much greater risk for other things like HIV and things like that. What, as the acupuncturist, do you do to protect yourself from bloodborne pathogens?
That's a good question, and really the answer is we're not using hypodermic needles. They're not hollow, they're solid, so we're not really coming into contact with many bloodborne pathogens, not as much as, say, maybe an EMT or,
Right.
your dental hygienist is going to become more in contact with bloodborne pathogens than, say, an acupuncturist, because the needles are so fine and so small, they're like little wires.
Okay. So you don't, in other words, you don't poke somebody and they almost ever bleed anyway.
You know, you might see a speck of blood and it's nothing that can't be solved with just pressure from a cotton ball.
Right. Okay.
So we made it through the House on the consent calendar, and then we went to our Senate hearing, and the Senate committee voted 5-0 in favor of the bill. So again, we were put on the Senate consent calendar. And then I arrived at the State House last Thursday with friends in the recovery community and some of the medical doctors who testified to support this bill, my husband and other friends, and we just wanted to celebrate the passing of the bill, and it was amended right on the floor. And it wasn't just a small amendment, it was a big amendment that changed the entire bill. I was not prepared for that.
Right.
And again, I've never done this before, so I don't know how normal that is, but it just doesn't seem right.
Okay, well, at the end of the year, this is how things happen in the House. At the end of the year, Senator A, B, and C co-sponsor bill and send it over to the House. And the House looks at it and says, no, this is stupid. Okay? And so later on in the year, because that's already passed the Senate, they say, well, there's this House bill that's come through, and everybody loves it. So we'll attach that bill to this bill and then send it back because everybody loves the first bill, they might not be as disagreeable as they were last time to our amendment. And the amendment is a separate bill that they've already passed, typically. Is that basically what you saw?
I just saw that the bill changed in a way that would make it very difficult to implement and too costly.
Okay, then maybe I'm entirely wrong, because that's usually what they do at the end of the year. What did the amendment do?
So the amendment grants more rulemaking authority to the Acupuncture Licensing Board to decide who can certify and train as an acupuncture detoxification specialist. They want to keep that as limited as possible, only to licensed professionals. The reality is, we have so many people in respite care here in Manchester. The licensing board doesn't understand it and doesn't want to. We need the people who are certified, not just licensed, to be able to practice a simple, safe protocol that will help keep people calm until they can make it into a 28-day program.
Right.
Is acupuncture a medical procedure?
Not really. I mean,
Okay.
you could call it that, but
But you need a license for it.
You need
but
a
it's-
license for
But it's
it.
not a medical procedure.
Right. It's not a medical procedure. You don't need to be anesthetized. You can do it as you can. Honestly, people come in and get acupuncture where I work when they could be getting their nails done. It's really something very simple. And so I'm really.
Do you think the lobbyists maybe interfered? And
There are no lobbyists.
there are no acupuncture.
I am the acupuncture lobbyist, and I'm fighting my own profession, and I'm doing it as a citizen advocate. No one's paying me to do this.
So who was it specifically that went to what senator and decided to skewer your bill? You know?
I don't know the details, but Senator Reagan told me that Representative McGuire had the amendment, and
Representative Carroll or Dan?
Dan's not in there anymore. It
Oh,
has
he's
to be
not.
Carol.
Oh, okay.
Why
So,
would Carol
I don't
do
know.
that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Carol is a libertarian.
Carroll should be anti-licensing, period, almost.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised.
That is
we should, you know what?
shocking.
We should ask Representative McGuire and ask her why she opposes this.
You
And
positive it's her?
she's a very smart lady. I mean, she's very.
I know she's a smart lady.
She's a real smart lady, great representative. So I'd like to. I
Yeah.
definitely want to know what she's thinking.
That is crazy. That's
So this is only what Senator Reagan told me, but Senator
Yeah.
Reagan also was trying to explain the amendment to me, but he was also admitting that he hadn't even read it yet himself. So I don't know, maybe what he told me isn't entirely
Were they voting
accurate.
on the amendment?
They voted on the amendment on the Senate floor, and it was Senator Sharon Carson that introduced it. But
that one makes sense. She's really pretty big government.
so I don't know,
Totally.
maybe Reagan got the names wrong. I don't know, and I'm misunderstanding things.
Wow.
Do you know? But you don't know what the amendment said.
The amendment gives the New Hampshire Licensing Board, I didn't complete all of it. So it gives more rulemaking authority to the New Hampshire Licensing Board to decide who can be a trainee and a practitioner of acupuncture detox, and it also allows them to decide where it can be implemented, and they also smacked on continuing education. So this is what kills the bill and makes it financially unfeasible to implement. So if only people who are licensed can practice this as opposed to people who are certified, it limits who can do this, and it takes it away completely from places where it needs to be. If they can stipulate where, then again, places that might need it the most aren't going to be able to have access to it. And then if you smack on continuing education, this puts an economic burden on people who are acupuncture detoxification specialists, because there are actually no continuing education classes for that, that specialty. Usually acupuncture detox is a continuing education unto itself for another allied health profession.
Right.
So everything about this completely takes away any effectiveness of the legislation. And it's everything that I've worked on all year outside of my job.
Right.
I just did this because
It's right.
I live in Manchester. It's the right thing to do.
That's all you got to.
I live in Manchester. Yeah. I walk to work every day, and for the last few years, I have seen hypodermic needles on snowbanks and on sidewalks and in front of my house when I was gardening, and I knew what the state needed. This is something that all acupuncturists know about, and so I'm really ashamed of my profession as a whole. I'm not at all surprised, but I'm ashamed that the board here in New Hampshire is falling in line with every other acupuncture licensing board in hoarding a simple, safe treatment that they owe no claim to anyway, because it wasn't even developed by licensed acupuncturists.
Right. So it's like it's that puts them right up there with the drug companies that hold on to a patent that can actually cure people.
Correct.
What was that sleazebag that bought a drug company? And I forget what the medication was, and they jacked up the price because it was patented, and it's the only source of that drug.
Right.
Because that's basically criminal.
Oh,
It might be legal.
Was it EpiPens or something like
He
that?
quadrupled the price of EpiPens.
Right.
Yeah,
even
representative's son or daughter.
Yeah.
Somebody had a big connection with that company.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the same
Congress.
sick, twisted thing of people who are putting barriers
Right.
in
Follow
front of
the
people.
money.
Follow
Right.
the money.
There is no money to
Well, no,
follow.
But there is no money. But there's control.
But there's control.
And
Control is as good as money.
control could be as good as money, but control is really what the legislature does, because they're really writing terms of the contract that we're all in that, frankly, nobody ever agreed to it, but you're just in it because you were
So
born
here we are. Everyone is asking for solutions.
So we just want.
I'm coming forward with a solution, and it is a small group of selfish, self-interested people who are probably harassing legislators and saying we don't like this because we don't like it.
Right.
And that's their only reason, and it makes us less prestigious, and it diminishes our personal achievement. Acupuncturists are the epitome of liberal elitists. The epitome.
Wow. The other thing is, it's profoundly short-sighted. In that, if they extended this out and said, you can treat for this, it starts ingraining in people, especially in recovery. Okay, when you get somebody who's in recovery and they escape that, and it's really an escape because you can't imagine what a burden it is to be owned by a drug, because that's essentially what's happened. Over time, that drug owns them. And to be relieved of that burden creates a loyal customer base and knowledge. And so what it will do is actually help acupuncturists, because over time, more and more people will be accepting, say, hey, that's really worked for A, so therefore let me go to a regular acupuncture and try it for B or C.
Exactly. People go to 28-day programs. They're just there 28 days. They want acupuncture afterwards, and they should have access to it. You want to prevent relapse, too.
Right.
Did this happen today?
This
Last
happened
week,
on
you said.
Thursday.
Last Thursday.
But acupuncture licensing boards are notorious for attacking chiropractors and physical therapists because they want to practice what's called dry needling. It's an acupuncture technique. But I'll tell you, I work in an affordable community clinic here in Manchester, and I meet people all the time who say, I had acupuncture from my chiropractor, from my PT, and I'm here now. And I think that's great. I see that happening a lot. But the private room acupuncturists, the boutiquers, as we like to call them, they charge a lot of money. They're trying to get insurance reimbursement. So anyone else practicing acupuncture who's not an acupuncturist, it's complete and utter turf warfare.
So this has nothing to do with insurance or collecting money
Nope.
or fees.
It doesn't. And people have asked me, how do we bill for this? You don't. You learn it and you practice it and you make it part of the job.
I gotta check on that.
So why is it an FN? Why is FN after it?
You're
I
asking
don't know.
someone who-
I
Well,
don't have
that's a
internet.
finance, right?
It's
Right.
finance. It's a financial note.
Right.
I think it has to do with anyone's practicing without a license. It's a felony, and then you have to pay the cost of putting someone in jail if they're practicing
Is it a
without
felony to
license.
practice without a license?
That's what the bill currently says.
That's ridiculous too.
A felony?
Yeah. So in the
More than a year incarcerated.
in the 1970s, when this protocol was developed, again, not by licensed acupuncturists, the recovery community of the South Bronx had to commit acts of civil disobedience. And the story is that people were even killed in the process, and they were just trying to get acupuncture into their recovery programs because they wanted alternatives to methadone. Those are the roots of the National Acupuncture Detoxification
Holy
Association.
crap! That actually makes more sense. Because if it's actually, and I'm sure it's not for everybody, but if it's actually an alternative to methadone, there's a lot of people who could lose a lot of money.
Methadone clinics will lose a ton.
If
You
start
can
s-
incorporate this into a methadone clinic.
Oh, I know, but it's easier to just give a dose.
shoot them up, get
Right.
them sign the check.
Right. It's easier to just take the
just
money.
letting you know.
But
if
we
you
live
start
here in
seeing
New
a-
Hampshire. Nobody wants to pay for anything. So here we have this bill
If you
that
start
is
seeing, like, a
fiscally
red laser pointer
conservative
on your chest,
and that addresses
move.
the opioid crisis.
Right.
No, I told you.
Oh, I get it, but you're learning a great lesson that what makes sense doesn't always fly in the
Yeah,
in
I'm learning that
Concord.
maybe I
Horrible.
should have gone with civil disobedience than trying to follow the
Right.
protocol.
Right. Yeah, no, I think I told you last time you were on, I had a bill that was pretty wicked cheap. And all it did was say that hospitals, it was going to be in Hillsborough County initially, if somebody came in after being treated with Narcan, before they left, they had to be given the opportunity to speak with a recovery coach. Now, recovery coaches, not much training. Typically, it's somebody, like 90-something% of the time, it's somebody who has already overcome either alcohol or drug abuse. They're in a 12-step program, and then they're basically volunteering to try to help other people. So that they can sit down with that person, a recovery coach could sit down with that person and says, look, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you had enough yet? Because if you have, if you're sick of it, this is what I can do to help you. And these are the programs that we have out there, and I'll pick you up and I'll take you to a meeting right now. They can do things that like a licensed social worker and or psychiatrist can't do
Yeah,
because it's personal and because they've been through it.
it's a great idea.
It's an awesome idea. Hospital Association did not think so because I don't know why. Because my theory is because those psychologists and psychiatrists that are getting paid by the hospital would all of a sudden be less necessary.
You need all of it.
I know. Well, I get
Yeah.
that.
Concord doesn't. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And one time, I mean, sometimes one or two individuals can change the momentum of something with an awful lot of support behind it.
Yeah.
And you sit there and you scratch your head and you go, how did that happen?
Everything was great until
Everything was
the
great.
very end.
I had a bill a second year.
Somebody tipped somebody off. Somebody
Yeah.
didn't like something, and it's amazing how you watch that flip. I had a bill in to study autonomous vehicles for the blind, And I thought, geez,
Something that I am actually super interested in because I got glaucoma.
Right.
And eventually I won't be able to drive.
so I sponsored this bill only as a study committee, and geez, it was unanimous through the transportation committee. It passed the House. It went to the Senate. And the only person that showed up and didn't like it was the lobbyist from Google. Flies in. Google. He flies in. He's sitting there going, "Well, we don't support this because, X, Y, Z, and whatever." And everybody's like, "So,
Yeah.
you're Google. I mean,
Right.
Competition. Why would they?
when did you ever hear of coming to New Hampshire anyway?" So it died. It died in the Senate. They called me up and they said, "We'd like you. You're gonna. You don't have to come testify. We're gonna kill it in the Senate." I go, "Okay, I'll work."
Wow.
So I was at my shop and I said, "All right, if you're gonna kill it, I mean." This was just a study committee for going out for some technology that might come around in 2040. Literally. No bill, no money, no legislation, just a study committee.
We're also dealing with a mental health care crisis here in New Hampshire.
Big
'cause-
time.
Big time.
On the show, actually.
And this specific ear acupuncture protocol
No, not you.
was discovered to be very helpful in treating post-traumatic stress disorder, especially for first responders.
Well, the thing is, if it's effective for drug addiction,
right.
it would almost
Right.
necessarily be good for that.
So if you want to see the clip that your wonderful producer queued up, it's from Laura Cooley's documentary about how the NADA protocol was really helpful for New Yorkers and first responders after the September 11 attacks.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Do you want to check it out?
Yep.
Yeah.
Paul, can you put that on for us? Hello, is that you? Is he out there? I don't know. When he gets back.
If we have any callers, feel free to call in too. We have a couple lines open.
So the bill will go to a committee of conference.
Yes.
And I'm really happy with the House legislators who will be supporting the bill in that conference.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know who the senators are yet, though.
Yeah. That's. Do
Do you think this is a partisan? Because
This is bipartisan.
I know it's bipartisan, but do you think this is partisan? What's going on? Do you think it's a sponsored by a Democrat
So
that may have been tried to get made convoluted or more complicated?
The
by a Republican?
the three representatives who are going to support the bill in the committee of conference are Republicans, and the entire bill has been sponsored and co-sponsored by Democrats.
Excellent. Okay, it's great. So
I couldn't find
so
any
people are working together.
Yeah, I couldn't find any Republicans at first who wanted to.
Wonderful.
Actually, no, I had one. It was Bill Marsh in Carroll County, and his name randomly got dropped, but he did write a supportive letter to the House committee.
Right.
And then after the hearing in the House, I won a lot of Republican support for this bill.
Excellent.
And even Al Baldessaro, I've been chatting with him, and he even talked to
Is
his
he a
state
cool
senator.
guy or what?
He's very nice to me.
Yeah. He's very nice to me.
He's nice to me.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah, like a brother.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, you out there?
Hi. That's my husband behind the camera.
Oh. Can you see if Paul's out there for us?
I thought he just walked in here.
He's not.
Oh, what will you let us know when he's in so we can get your favorite wife's video on?
Sure.
Thank you. I assume that's presumptive. No, I think it was my first term. I introduced legislation. What was a common practice in the courts for little kids who had been sexually abused is for the defense attorney to sequester or subpoena the parents. The reason they did that is because you can't cross-pollinate testimony. So if they were subpoenaed, that meant that when the child was in there, mom or dad could not be in the same room with them. And so defense attorneys were doing that to little kids. So you had a little 13-year-old kid going up on the stand with the jury sitting over there in suits and whatever, the person that abused them sitting across from them with a lawyer next to him and a guy in a black or a woman in a black dress. Very intimidating. And so the defense attorneys were doing that to make sure that child didn't have support in the room, to intimidate the kid.
Okay.
Okay? So I had, I got that through the House. It went to the Senate in a committee of conference. No, first it went through the Senate and it was killed in the Senate. So I tacked it on the House floor, a floor amendment to attach it to another bill. So it went back to the Senate again, and this time it was killed in a committee of conference. And so it didn't cost anybody anything. It didn't jeopardize anybody's rights, because the way you would do it is you'd call the mother in first, then call the father in separately. And then when the child was testifying, mom and dad could still be there if the kid wanted them there.
Okay.
So it wasn't jeopardizing the case for the defense, which you wouldn't want to do either. It was just making sure that child wasn't hung out to dry, which is what the defense attorneys had been doing.
I see.
And it took years to get that through, even though it didn't cost anybody anything. It's the moral thing to do.
So I know that when the alcohol fund here in New Hampshire was threatened, there was a big public outcry. And so one of the reasons why I asked if I could come on your show today is to let people know that a bill that successfully made it through the House and was successfully supported in a Senate committee is now in jeopardy at a really crucial time. We always need this legislation. The New Hampshire Licensing Board could have written this into their laws years ago, and they chose not to. And they absolutely knew that about this protocol and that it's helpful, and they've chosen to ignore it.
Right.
We need people to come out and say we need more tools for recovery, especially if they're safe and especially if they will do no harm. We need all options available.
How about alcoholism?
This would treat alcoholism. This treats sex offenders, because that's an addiction too. This treats smoking cessation. I treated myself for months before this House hearing because I was so nervous, just to keep myself calm and focused.
Is it the same treatment?
It's the same 5-needle ear acupuncture protocol.
Treats all of these addictions?
Yeah, and it treats post-traumatic stress disorder. If we could get the video clip up.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you look at alcoholism and drug addiction, the common denominator is that it's typically people who are treating them, they're medicating,
Self-medicating.
it's self-medicating
Right.
to get over a post-traumatic stress type inner feeling, whether or not the incident that caused it, or even if there was one, exists. It's still the same type of emotional trauma or problem that a guy coming back from combat would have, or similar. I don't want to put them on the same, because one's, the government put them in a position to end up with that. So that's, to me, different. But it was interesting. Oh, you want to hear something really cool?
Yeah.
This is wicked cool. A recent study on rats. It was 2014. It's not that recent. On rats. They took, they have special rats for testing that are all genetically identical, basically. And
Hey, Gary, I'm back if you wanted to play that video.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just stalling.
Yeah.
That's an old test, by the way. That test I've heard about that test since the 80s.
That's a different one.
After the World Trade Center attack, the therapists were nervous. The patients were frightened and nervous and didn't know what to say either. So very few people were interested in verbal therapy immediately. Very, very few.
I was assigned to a subacute ER in the hospital, and we had all this equipment, but very few patients coming through. It was really a firefighter who was in the subacute ER who was so distraught looking. I asked him, did he have anything that he wanted to say, and he didn't.
The object of the game for me and for the people that I work with is to reduce stress for firefighters. And we found that a very simple way to do that is acupuncture.
When acupuncture started to be used after the 9/11 attack, for instance, we had always talked about it previously as being related to addiction problems because we didn't really have any venue to learn how it might be relatable.
We were very busy. There were days that we were seeing up to 100 people. Now, the counseling unit was right next to the ear acupuncture clinic, and they were seeing far fewer numbers of people. I think that's indicative of what it is that people were looking for. What was filling their need? They didn't want to talk.
Medications are easier, right? Being able to take a medication daily that really does help modulate affect is very useful, but the medicines are very expensive, and a lot of people aren't interested in medications. But what you then have to have are tools that are readily available.
The good thing about this system, it's not only easy to use, but it's easy to teach people how to do this. Of all the things you're going to teach people in crisis, this is close to the safest you could possibly do.
I think that the ear acupuncture actually could have a major role in preventive medical health. One of the things we know, say the cardiologists increasingly talk about, is how stress impacts cardiac health. Things like hypertension, high cholesterol, heart disease basically. So if you have a simple tool that actually helps stress reduction, why not use it for medical problems?
Wow, that's pretty cool. I got to finish my rat story.
Okay.
So they did an experiment where they took half of the rats and they let them have a normal life with, whatever rats do. And then the other rats they deliberately stressed out.
Yeah.
And so the rats exhibited, basically post-traumatic stress, and they would behave like we see drug addicts and alcoholics behave by doing behaviors that are, not conducive to life. Like going out, like a rat would go out into the open, which a normal rat would stay around in the shadows and stuff like that to stay alive, because that's instinctually what they do. And so they would exhibit all these behaviors, the stressed out rats. Well, that makes sense. What really is cool is they let the next generation come up. And the next generation of normal rats had normal children. The next generation of rats that were stressed out had stressed out rats. And it was only carried through the male. So a male stressed out rat would carry those same behaviors would exist in the next generation. So in other words, they believed in the article that it was carried not in the DNA, but in the RNA, which is the triggers inside your DNA that tell it when to, go off and on. And I just thought that was really interesting, because that could explain why alcoholism tends to be hereditary, is because whatever stressed out dad, like my dad was in Korea, which should stress out anybody, and maybe that influenced us kids.
Right.
So I just thought that was pretty interesting, because we want to attribute that post-traumatic stress to a event in somebody's life.
Oh, that just reminds me, the other amendment to the bill is anything having to do with mental health was completely stricken in the amendment that was introduced on the Senate floor last Thursday. And
what does that affect? How does that affect it?
So the original bill allowed for mental health workers to practice the acupuncture detox protocol, and the mental health aspect was stricken from, was stricken, and there was no public hearing to discuss that. And we made a case. We had a veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder testify in the House hearing. Then she got triggered and started breaking down, listening to someone else testify on the stigma of trauma. Actually, a Republican legislator got up from his chair and sat down next to her to calm her down. The veteran with PTSD, and she was so triggered by the acupuncturists who were so oppositional to this bill that she didn't feel comfortable showing up to the Senate hearing. She wanted to tell her story, and she wanted to talk about why the bill was important to her, but she was too triggered by the licensed acupuncturists who were opposing helping anybody.
Did the licensed acupuncturists come up with any rational explanation why they were opposed?
Again, they said that they didn't like it, that nobody asked them, and that someone might faint. Oh, yeah, and we have to go to school for 3,000 hours. Why should someone who has a few weekends of training get to be able to do this? I can tell you right now, I had the same 3,000-hour training. Acupuncture school in the 80s and 90s was a 2-year program. And then acupuncture schools were accredited and they could get federal student loan money. So then they made the programs longer. Let's add Chinese herbs. Let's add chemistry. Let's pretend we're doctors. Now acupuncture schools are gunning for first professional doctorate programs. So what should be a vocation in order to allow acupuncture to become accessible is now this ridiculous, you decide, do you want to be a fake doctor or a fake guru? Because that's what acupuncturists act like.
Okay.
Right. They posture as doctors, or they posture as your own private spiritual teacher. As a community acupuncturist, or I prefer the term acupunk, we're just acupunks, and we offer acupuncture affordably in our communities.
Didn't Devo do those acupunks?
I don't think so. But that
Sorry.
that is the same argument that we used to hear with hairdressers. 3,000 hours of school, whatever they have, 5,000 hours. And why should anybody be able to cut hair in their house? It's the same argument. And this is the other thing that you'll see once you're up there long enough. I was there 6 years. That was long enough.
It's really funny because the hair braiding bill was going on just before our bill.
What was that?
The hair braiding bill. People shouldn't
braid people's
You can't
hair.
braid people's hair.
Without a license. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't want anybody braiding people's hair without a license.
How to shoot the economy in the foot.
Right.
Just try to cut everybody off by the knees before they get started.
Right, they want them to have the same 3,000 or 5,000 hours.
Wow.
To braid somebody's hair. You can't braid your friend's hair at your house.
When I first started acupuncture school in 2003,
You don't braid anybody's hair, though, so I don't want you getting in trouble.
the people who are graduating out of my program,
That's
as
what
I was,
happened to him, isn't it?
That's what happened to me. I had my hair
you lost your
braided.
hair.
Yeah. Damn it.
I did it myself, but I stopped in time.
Yeah. No, you didn't.
So I entered acupuncture school in 2003, and the class that was graduating took two national board exams to get their licenses nationally. And by the time I was graduating, I had to take five of them. Actually, no, it was 4 that were required. The 5th was optional, but we were told, take herbs because you never know, wherever you end up practicing, it might make it required that you are a licensed herbalist.
Which is ridiculous. It's like my son's will be done reasonably soon with his 2-year degree in treatment, and then he's got to basically work almost for free. I'm not positive, but like for X number of thousands of hours. It's insane. It's insane how much. It's like they don't really want to help people. Once people get those degrees, it seems like they, unlike you, they get there and they say, "Wow, let's protect this." It's like it's the same mentality in Ware, New Hampshire, where once people move in, they're really glad they get to move there, and then they say, "Wait a second, I don't want anybody else moving here."
Yeah.
It's so profoundly.
The acupuncture profession is a dismal failure. I mean, across the board, our trade journals will say things like, oh, everything's great, but they're not counting to the fact that many people don't even make it past their first 5 years of practice. And there's a job task analysis that's done every year. So the numbers for graduates who graduated in 2014 are really dismal. Most of them, if they are practicing at all, are only making poverty wages.
Right.
And we're trying to get an entire profession to reckon with the fact that making the programs longer and adding doctoral level degrees to them isn't going to make acupuncturists more successorial in their practices.
Much less successful.
It's just going to land them deeper in debt and probably even more territorial about their turf.
They did that with personal trainers too.
Did they really?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, I've heard so many of these come before the committee that I was sitting on. And you'd hear it one profession after another, and somebody was like, geez, I just want to, somebody would want somebody to have an X amount of education out.
Actually, I think it was even in the Daily Signal, they were saying that even the Obama administration thought that professional licensure was getting to be too out of hand and was restricting people from being able to make a living.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've got to get $100,000 in debt just to become an acupuncturist, how many years does it take to pay that back?
Right. Many people
it can't
don't.
be worth it.
Yeah, it's not, and it's something that. It's not something that you go into to make a lot of money. It's something you go into because you feel called to do it. And unfortunately, that's not the case.
That's pretty
Yeah,
horrible.
society doesn't run on call to do it.
So I'm part of a cooperative that's trying to change the profession, but that's really difficult.
How many years call in line one? Norm's calling in.
Norm.
Hi, Norm. Norm?
Hey, Norm.
Yeah.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, I want to let you know there's nothing better than acupuncture. If you've got a lot of pains around you or a lot of sickness, in fact, I recommend to all my clients that come in, if you need a lot of treatment done, go to your local acupuncture, and I guarantee that you'll feel a lot better than any medical pharmaceutical drugs you could have. I really recommend acupuncture to everybody. And that's my belief. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm.
Thanks, Norm.
Where are you? Where's your shop before we forget? Because I don't want you to get out of here without getting some free advertising.
I work at the Manchester Acupuncture Studio. We have 2 locations, in Manchester at 813 Canal Street and in Nashua at 4 Bud Way. And on Saturday, June 3rd, it's our 10-year anniversary, so we'll be doing free acupuncture all day on June 3rd. That'll be from 9 to 4 in Manchester and 9 to 1 in Nashua.
And that's the place that, now you work there.
I work there as an acupuncturist. We do general practice. So the legislative piece that I'm working on really doesn't have anything to do with my day job or my sometimes day, sometimes evening and weekend job, my job. But it's something that as acupuncturists in our practice, we know that this legislation is important and would be really helpful.
How does the place you work for feel about this?
Oh, yeah, no, my boss supports it. As a matter of fact, he testified in favor of the bill. And when he interviewed me almost 7 years ago, he said that it was something that, this project was something that he wanted to do eventually, but he has been really busy with other projects. And I love New Hampshire and the politics, and I have a lot of fun during the primary. But when everyone was talking about the opioid crisis, I felt ready to jump in, and so I did.
You're awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're awesome.
This is this is quite a subject. I mean, it's definitely a topic that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if the state, it's like once people get licenses, that's all they want to do is make nobody else ever be able to do what they do.
Once they get the license, they want to be very restricted on who they allow into that circle to do that work.
Exactly.
It restricts it restricts competition.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's what it's all about.
And that's what they do. And I tell you, I used to sit through that. I mean, we had sponsored bills in there to eliminate a lot of licensing, and we heard from those licensed people, they'd come in droves for whatever group we happen to be talking about that time. And they would not want to get rid of the licensing because it protects their...
I'm not even asking to get rid of the licensing. I'm just asking for this small, for a section of people to be able to be allowed to practice one specific protocol.
Right. No, what you're doing is
I mean,
actually...
we just passed medical marijuana, for goodness. You know what? You know, we're trying to work with ways to
Heal holistically.
heal holistically, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
without paying
But yet-
somebody an arm and a leg.
Right.
Right. But somehow, and I don't know the risks of. I mean,
How many
diseases
people?
don't.
How many people have you killed doing acupuncture?
I've not killed anyone doing acupuncture, but I'm getting angry enough to want to. No, I'm not going to say it out loud.
Whoa.
I'll call Al Baldessaro and I'll tell him, like, I know who you should. Anyway.
Right? Yeah, he's a good hitman. He's pretty good.
Right.
You don't want to hire me. I'm blind, so I just have to kill everybody. And
Yeah,
that's,
no, nobody
that's
should.
a lot of ammo. Ammo's
Nobody needs to
expensive.
get killed, but we do need to save
Nobody
people from
needs-
dying.
Can I quote you on that? Nobody needs to be killed.
But we do need to save people from dying.
Right. Okay.
And so I'm asking everyone who is affected by this crisis, or if you just know that the crisis exists, which the Acupuncture Licensing Board doesn't want to face up to call your state senators and make a ruckus. I mean, we saved the alcohol fund because people really wanted to keep it when it
Right.
was threatened, and we need that now. We need people to contact their legislators and also talk to people who work in recovery programs. Say, I know this protocol exists and we need it here in New Hampshire.
Do you volunteer to go? Do you volunteer at rehab?
I do
facilities?
volunteer. I volunteer at a respite care once a week, and I've been training people who work there in how to do the same protocol but with ear seeds. So it's acupressure, it's not needle based. And so generally it takes me showing up to get people to do it. But I'd like to train more
have you
people.
been over to
if I
Hope
could.
Recovery yet?
I've called them, they've not called me back. And I actually volunteered in a sober living facility also in Manchester, and I could only go one day a week, and it didn't match the schedules of many of the women who live there. And ultimately that sober living house closed because many people were having a hard time staying sober.
It is really difficult. You know, I know some of my conservative friends will say, just don't do it. Just don't do drugs. Yeah, well, once it owns you, it's not that simple. And they just cannot fathom how anybody can be controlled by a little white powder, you know? It's
They try.
so narrow-minded.
Britain controlled China.
They own China.
They own China with little white powder. So you know, we know how powerful it is.
Oh, yeah.
And we know how easy it is to get and distribute. Obviously, it's
And that
more
was-
than an epidemic.
Yeah, it was back in the Opium Wars. That's what England did to China. They just forced them to take opium because they didn't like the fact that
They gave it to them. They had an entire population of
addicts.
Yeah.
And that was
They
back
weren't
when it
very
was just
productive.
opium. Yeah, that's why the Chinese government tried to stop them from shipping it in. And that's when England went in and blew the heck out of all their ports and killed a whole hell of a lot of Chinese
Yeah, a lot
to
of history
force
with this.
them to take
Our
opium
government
and
knows
trade.
what that stuff does to our people,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
yet they don't stop it from coming in. And
Don't stop it. It was after the war in Afghanistan that all of a sudden the opium crisis started. Hey, we got to go. We got 30 seconds. Thank you very much for all you're doing, and don't get discouraged. If it dies in committee, you can Bob and I will sponsor it again in September, because as long as the bill passes the House, you can reintroduce it. It's only when the House rejects a bill that it's not.
you have to wait 2 years.
You have to wait 2 years.
Well, hopefully.
So, well,
next
one
time
step,
around.
one step at a time. This is your first venture into the insanity we call politics in New Hampshire.
Oh yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you guys next week.